Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Patriots Pulse podcast. As you can see, we have a very special guest here with us today, a man that needs no introduction. You guys see him everywhere. He works harder than pretty much any beat writer on the Patriots, and he was kind enough to join us today. We have Alex Barth here from 985thesportshub.com. Alex, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, Andrew, how are you? I know it's been a while since we spoke.
Yeah, I've been good. Just getting through school, ready for Drake May's debut.
Yep, that was like the big thing, but I'm excited to talk about it with you guys, especially with you, Alex, because I've been watching all the podcasts you're on. I've been reading your stories. I agree with a lot of your opinions, so I'm excited to hear more about them.
Okay, cool. Love to hear it.
All right, Andrew.
So first, we're just going to start off before we dive into the preview for the game on Sunday. Just get to know our guests a little bit. So, Alex, first of all, how are you doing today? Second, just give the people your story and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, I'm good. So my background is I work for 985 The Sports Hub. I've been doing so since the start of 2020, mainly covering the Patriots, but I do cover a little bit of everything. Before that, I kind of had a bunch of different part-time jobs. Most people probably know me from covering the Patriots for CLNS for 2 years with Evan Lazar. Simultaneous with that, I was doing I was an editor at NBC Sports Boston. I was doing play-by-play at a bunch of local colleges. I was doing a podcast with CLNS and doing some Red Sox and Celtics coverage for them. I was the PA announcer and the on-field host for the Lowell Spinners for 2 years. I was on the street team at the Sports Hub. I was doing a lot. So I was kind of all over the place before I covered the Patriots. I also worked with the Cape League when I was in college. I worked with Felger and Maz. I went to school at Ithaca. So I've kind of been around a lot, but now it's been nice these last couple of years just getting to mainly focus on Boston sports, professional Boston sports, and the Patriots.
Yeah, that's honestly cool to hear. I personally didn't know like you had your foot in the door with so many different aspects of sports in general. Obviously, me being out here on the West Coast, I know a lot of people aren't fans of it, but I'm a Warriors fan. I've never said that online, but I was following your coverage, or like not even your coverage, but just like even just your tweets when the Celtics played the Warriors in the finals. That was really enjoyable. But besides that, we could just move on from that. The reason I like you talking about your past in general is just because I want people to understand that like, one, there's no same path for everybody. And I know you've spoken about this as well. But two, it's just kind of like, that's how you can back up your opinion in a way, just because you've been around for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm from here. I grew up a 5-minute ride from Gillette Stadium. Like, you know, when I was in high school and in college, when I got back, like when me and my friends went out, we go down to Patriots place. Like I spent a ton of time down there, and I only went to 2 games before I covered the team. I mean, we would watch them at home. But yeah, I'm from this area. I grew up in this area. You know, Boston sports has always been a big part of my life. So I haven't always been writing about it or talking about. Well, I've always been talking about it, but not necessarily in like a public forum. But yeah, it's just something that's been a big part of my life experience pretty much from the beginning. So, yeah, it's, you know, I do like, I know sometimes people wonder like how connected writers are to the teams and things like that. And it's like, I'm invested in it. Like I'm in it. Like I still definitely consider myself a fan. The fandom definitely changes when you cover these teams. In some ways it enhances it a little bit. There's definitely some drawbacks to it as well. I don't know that it makes it better or worse. It's just different. But yeah, it's like I didn't just kind of show up here in 2018 or show up here in 2020 and start just firing off takes. Like there's a long-standing basis behind a lot of what I say and a lot of what I believe in when it comes to local teams.
Yeah, of course. So there's no better man to hear from and talk to when we speak about the new Patriots quarterback 1. So Andrew, we can just jump right into it. we'll discuss the big news that happened yesterday. Drake Maye is the new starting quarterback for the New England Patriots. Alex, what are your initial thoughts?
So, like, my initial thought was I was surprised it was that sudden. There was a report from Ian Rapport a couple weeks ago where he talked about a ramp-up period that hadn't happened yet. Maybe that happened behind the scenes. Maybe that's just something he was told that was disregarded. But I left the game Sunday feeling like if Drake wasn't going to start against the Texans, the ramp-up at least needed to start this week. So not overly surprised, definitely a little surprised. And then my reaction just goes to, honestly, and I've written a lot about this and I've talked a lot about this. Drake Maye is going to do what Drake Maye does. And that doesn't mean that, look, obviously he's an important part of this story. Like, he's taking over as the quarterback, third overall pick. That's a big part of it. But I've always believed when it comes to quarterback position, it's in quarterback development, it's just as much about the situation the guy is in as much as it is about the guy himself. And so, like, I wrote this morning while everybody's writing, Drake Maye this, Drake Maye that. My kind of first big take was, well, who else do we watch a little bit closer? Who else now becomes more important or more in the spotlight with Drake Maye taking over as the starter? That can be a guy like Pop Douglas, who I just don't think ever got on the same page as Jacoby Brissett, but should be a big part of this offense. Can he get on the same page with Drake Maye? A guy like Ramondre Stevenson, who didn't practice today, so we'll see, but you can't be fumbling the ball and limiting opportunities for your rookie quarterback. Like, a running game is a young quarterback's best friend. Can they count on him? Because going into last week, that was a real question. And then I think the biggest individual outside of the quarterback room that's impacted by this change is Alex Van Pelt. Alex Van Pelt has gotten a lot of criticism, I would say rightfully so, for the performance of the offense through 5 weeks. I say rightfully so, but at the same time, I don't think it's super relevant to the Patriots long-term what Alex Van Pelt's plans for Jacoby Brissett are. Just because Jacoby Brissett's not a part of the long-term plan, right? Yeah. Can he design, like, I think Van Pelt did a good job working with Maye in the summer on the technique and the mechanics of it all. And that's important. That's relevant. But that work is done. Can he design and call an offense that makes use of Drake Maye's best skills and puts him in a position to succeed? Yes or no? That is, to me, the biggest story over the next 12 weeks. Because even if Drake Maye shows promise, right? But it's clear that the offense is holding him back or limiting him. If those two can't work together, they're not moving on from the third overall pick, right? They're not moving on from that guy. It's going to be the offensive coordinator. So that's kind of my gut reaction. Is Drake Maye is going to show us what he can do, but I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of who he is as a player. It's who's going to grow with him long term and who's good. Like, ideally, Drake Maye is going to be here long term. If he sucks, he sucks, but then you got to throw it all out and start completely from scratch, because that's just what happens. Assuming Drake Maye's good and the guy you're building around, who else is going to show up as a guy you're going to build with him alongside of him? That, to me, is kind of the big question for the rest of the season here. Or a major question. I guess the big question is Drake Maye, but another important question, one maybe people will overlook.
Yeah, and I know you were just alluding to, we got to, like, kind of focus on other aspects of the offense and other players and personnel like Pop Douglas. With that, how much do you think Drake Maye is able to elevate the offense in terms of getting other receivers involved and keeping, like, longer sustained drives?
He should help. Now, it's going to be tough to see, where's his chemistry at with some of these guys. Something that does help him, right? Some of the receivers he's working with now spent a lot of time with the twos over the summer, because the starters were KJ Osborne, who's hurt, Tyquan Thornton, who they're not putting on the field. Like, he got to spend some time with Pop. He definitely spent time with Jalen Polk. Spent some time with Austin Hooper. So that's going to help him. I think the big one is Pop Douglas, and Drake Maye's a guy that is better throwing to the middle of the field, and that's where Pop Douglas is going to thrive. I thought it was interesting in camp, Drake Maye compared Pop Douglas to Josh Downs, who he had a ton of success with at UNC. So I guess to go back to your question was kind of just like which wide receivers are the most impacted, I think, if I understood that. Yeah, Pop Douglas to me is the big one. And then the other one is Kendrick Bourne, because we forget how good of a downfield receiver Kendrick Bourne can be. because he just hasn't had the quarterback for that the last couple of years. Drake Maye can get him the ball down the field. So, we got to see how his knee looks and if he still is explosive. But assuming he is, I think Drake Maye is a guy that can really unlock some of what he does.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to pull up a quick question we have from the chat, Andrew?
I do. We got a special guest in the chat here from Mike Cadillac. Alex, where do you rank all the Patriots uniforms they've ever worn and why?
Well, it is throwback week, so this is appropriate, Mike. Thanks for watching. So I actually wrote this on 98.5thesportshub.com a couple years ago. And if you Google Patriots uniform rankings, I think I'm going to check here in real time, but it is the number. Well, it's number 2 now, I guess, but it is like, if you scroll down, it is one of the top options on Google if you search Patriots uniform rankings. So that's up on 98.5thesportshub.com. But spoiler alert, the ones they're going to wear this Sunday, red jersey, white pants, white helmet, white face mask. I think this is the apex Patriots uniform. So I know, like, I'm sort of the uniform guy. People have asked me, like, what do we read into Drake Maye making his debut in the throwbacks? Is it good? Is it bad? Bailey Zappi did it. He made his first career start in a red, so it's not totally unheard of. I feel like, I guess it's a good vibe. But I've seen some people go the other way. I don't know what you guys think, but yeah, that the ones they're wearing this week is the apex. Mike is texting me right now. Okay, he's glad you guys asked the question.
I definitely think the red uniforms, like the whole throwback week, I think that does boost at least the fans in general. I mean, from the past couple years, the fans do get a bit more rowdy whenever throwback week happens. So maybe that does help. And with Drake Maye starting, that's like obviously a big boost. But yeah, I'm interested to know what's your take on the Royal Blues if they decide to bring them back?
Like the flying Elvis shoulder ones. Those would be cool as a throwback. I would not make those full time, but that's a great 90s sports uniform. Like, you look around, baseball was doing that thing with the cutoff sleeves, and you had all the cartoony animals in the NBA and stuff. It would be cool. Like, I know there's some teams that do, like, they have different throwback games for different eras. So it'd be really cool if the Patriots went to, do once with the Reds, once with the Flying Elvis, one game with the Dynasty uniforms year, and then you do the rest with what they have now with the silver pants, with the blue. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I actually, personally, I just like those a lot. But we'll steer
cool.
back.
I just think they'd be a lot every week.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they're definitely, like, they could be an eyesore if you see them too much, if I'm being honest. Mike says the Bledsoe Blues are goated, so I mean, Mike seems to be on board. But to steer back towards the Drake Maye talk, the one person that comes to mind, I know a lot of people aren't really thinking about him, and rightfully so. He's obviously he's been producing, but not to the extent that he's going to be like a well-recognized name, I guess you could say, across the league. But I feel like Antonio Gibson might have a bigger role now with Drake Maye at QB. I did want to ask you, what is your thoughts, or if you even know if you've seen like some of his college film, or if you have like any idea of what his tendency is to throw to the running back. Obviously, since he's like a scrambling quarterback, most people will say he's going to be the one running. He's going to be the one making plays if things break down. But I feel like Antonio Gibson might get a slight bump in usage because of Drake Maye.
It's definitely possible. I mean, especially, look, Ramondre Stevenson in practice today. So it might be by default, right? They might not have an option. I would say Drake Maye throw it in the running backs. Off the top of my head, I can't give you like a tendency in terms of like what percentage of the time he throws to the back, but I will say this: he's not afraid to use the running back as a check down or use the running back as an outlet when the pressure heats up. But there are more instances than you want to see of him being a little erratic when making those throws. And that's just along the lines of him just not having the same short accuracy as some of these other guys. He's more of a big play quarterback. So whether they worked on that, whether that's something they maybe tell him to be careful about, we'll see. But he's not afraid to throw that pass to the running back if it'll get him out of trouble. He's just actually got to get it to the running back.
And I got to ask, do you think that Maye's going to be a bit more excuse me, a bit more poised in the pocket and a bit more confident. Kind of felt like Brissett over the last couple of weeks. He's gotten happy feet. He's kind of just like he's just nervous back there, running into pressure a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think at first he will be because he hasn't been exposed to any of this. And I think he just seems like the kind of guy that will be confident going into his first start. The real question is, can he maintain that? Because he's going to face pressure. He's going to get hit. He's going to have hands in his face while he's throwing, like all of that. And, Brissett was pressured on half of his dropbacks through the first 5 weeks, 50%. That's an astronomical number. That is a number that is of historical relevance. So, and that's a guy that's been in the league for a long time. Mm-hmm. When Drake Maye faces that, maybe he doesn't face 50, but I mean, there's no new offensive lineman. It's probably going to be around that. It's going to be over 40. Does he get sped up? Does he get nervous? Does he get happy feet? Does he start seeing ghosts? That's going to be a big question. Like, I can't tell you. I don't know. I'd like to say no, but odds are yes. And can they get a continuous offensive line to keep him protected? Can they play call that prevents him from facing too much pressure? And that can be rollouts, quick releases, things like that, leaving 6 men in the block. But whether or not he gets sped up is going to be one of the first major questions, or to what extent he gets sped up is going to be one of the first major questions he has to answer. And we're going to see. So I would expect this Sunday he comes out looking relatively confident in the pocket because, again, he hasn't been taking these hits for the last 4 weeks. Let's see what happens if he gets tuned up once or twice. Right. And that is very telling for any young quarterback, how they bounce back from the first couple hits they take in the pocket.
Yeah, I mean, just looking back to the Jets week, he got hit a lot in that short amount of time that he was in the game. But people can point to the game against the Commanders or Panthers? I can't remember. The preseason game when he did that rollout to KJ Osborne. People can point to that and say he can escape the pocket, he can create plays with his feet and throw it down the field. Or it could be one of those instances where he tried running out of the pocket against the Jets and the linebacker laid him out. So I'll be interested to see what. Obviously, that's not technically like his choice for like what's going to happen, like if the defenders are actually going to catch him. But I am interested to see if he will try to stay in the pocket as much as he can. He said it today at his press conference too, like that he's gonna stand in there and he's going to make like the right decisions. He said something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, but he didn't. Because I believe someone asked him like his ability to extend plays and do off-platform throws, and he not necessarily shut it down, but he just said like, I'm going to try to stay in the pocket. And just, I guess that's like a way of him putting confidence in the O-line, that he has confidence in them. So we'll see how that goes, especially against the Texans. And it'll be a good test for him as far as like a first start, especially with them playing the Jaguars next week. So that might be like your trial by fire, and then, not so much fire the second week. So it can make a difference.
Yeah, it definitely helps that it'll get easier the next few weeks. And you almost look at like, is this game going to be kind of ankle weights, right? Where this game's not going to be easy, but then he's going to get a handful of games where, will they feel all the much easier because he's faced the Texans.
Yeah. And I feel like he's kind of used to working outside of structure and having to extend plays. Like when he was at UNC, I saw Mike Reese put this out in one of his articles. I think UNC has let up around just over 400 pressures in the past 2 seasons, which leads the FBS. So that kind of just alludes to Maye's ability to work out of structure and just how used to it he is. But with that, speaking of pressure, Texans, their edge rushers, primarily like Will Anderson, Daniel Hunter, they've been killer on the edge against opposing offensive lines. Is that, do you think, Maye's biggest challenge heading into Sunday, or is there something else?
I mean, I guess the abstract of how he handles the whole start is probably the biggest challenge. But yeah, I mean, the toughest part of the Texans defense is their pass rush. And these guys play aggressive. These guys play very high energy style of football. This is not bend, don't break. This is not contain. This is not conservative. They play defense with an offensive mentality. They want negative plays. They want turnovers. They're not willing to risk to get them because they're damn good players and they know they can afford to take those risks. So, yeah, I would say just those two guys. I would say certainly those two guys pose the biggest threat to Drake Maye. Absolutely.
Yeah, and as far as the Texans defense, I mean, obviously everyone's talking about the pressure, but I also think that Derek Stingley being on the boundary makes a big difference as well. I know the Patriots don't necessarily have a wide receiver one that he's essentially going to lock down, but that does make a difference as far as which side of the field Drake May is going to have to throw to, where the pressure is going to be coming from. So we'll see how the person that I have the biggest question mark on is Vidarian Lowe, just if he can continue that good game that he had against the Dolphins. I had, like Andrew, you and I spoke about it, that the Dolphins was, in my opinion, going to be their easiest pass rush to block all season, just because of the injuries they've had. Alex, I don't know if you think otherwise, but I just hope that he uses that as like a building, or Vidarian Lowe uses that as a building block in order to, just be prepared for what's to come.
Yeah, it's crazy. Vidarian Lowe's not one of my bigger worries on the offensive line, which probably says more about the rest of the line. But, he played well last week, and obviously he's got a tough test this week. But I look at a guy like Nick Leverett, who is playing a position he's played, going into last week, less than 100 snaps at. It's a crucial pre-snap position in this offense. He's a ton on his plate. He's hurt. He's still on the injury report. Is coming off a really rough performance. 10 pressures allowed last week. Like that, and edge pressure is one thing. Interior pressure will ruin your day. Interior pressure is the worst. So I look at Nick Leverett as the most crucial lineman in this game, and he needs to be better. And if he's not better, I even wonder if, well, he was elevated last week. I would assume he'll be elevated this week, if not signed to the roster. Brian Hudson, their backup center, if he gets a look, if Leverett's not fully good to go, because that's a pivotal position, because those guys on the edge are going to get theirs, and you can help out on the edge. It's easier to do that. You start having free rushers coming up the middle, there's not much you can do. You need the quarterback to do something spectacular to make a play in that situation. I'm not saying Drake Maye can't, but let's not ask him to have to do that consistently in his first start. That seems like a bad situation, right? So, yeah, to me, it's like Nick Leverett's the guy I'm watching kind of under a microscope this week. And can he be better than he was last week and give Maye the ability to step up in the pocket, make sure the pre-snap reads are set, not allow any free rushers, things like that. He's a monumentally important player for this team this week.
I mean, outside of Nick Leverett, the line in terms of pass protection, they've looked improved compared to the first couple of weeks. But I wanted to ask you, Alex, do you think that's more of a product of the Dolphins' poor pass rush, or is that something that's going to continue to stack onto each other and they're going to continue improving?
Well, look, the Dolphins' pass rush is definitely a part of it, but I think just naturally, when you have guys playing their actual position, they're going to play better. Mike Onwenu's a guard. He was playing tackle. Demontre Jacobs is a right tackle. He was playing left tackle. There's a big difference there that people don't realize. So you had your best lineman playing out of position, and you had somebody playing out of position at the most important offensive line spot. That's going to make a big impact. Like, that's going to change things. So it was better. I don't know that it was good, but I don't know that it's ever going to get good. You just hope it gets marginally better at this point, and then we'll deal with it in the off season. But I think again, the Dolphins pass rush is part of it, but Mike Onwenu just looks so much more comfortable as a guard. You get Demontre Jacobs at right tackle where he's played. You get Vidarian Lowe, actual left tackle in there. It just makes the whole operation smoother because guys aren't worried about the basics. Guys aren't worried about the bare minimum, because that's the whole thing about playing out of position. There's certain things that just become muscle memory, that become second nature, that you don't have to think about, that you're just doing because you've done them over and over and over again for years and years and years. And when you play out of position, suddenly you have to think about some of those things. And I think that guys not having to do that, actually, like, there's a tangible difference there.
Yeah, there's the one person that I look at as well, and I feel like maybe it's a good thing that people aren't talking about him, just because the guy that's playing that position right now has been doing relatively good, is City So. I'm interested to see if his I don't want to call it benching, but just the fact that he didn't play over Michael Jordan. I don't know if that's maybe injury, something related to an injury, or if he re-aggravated something, but the fact that Michael Jordan has jumped him on the depth chart, that's kind of noteworthy, just because he was like the solidified starter coming into the season, and now you have a guy that has been like a practice squad journeyman or on and off NFL rosters, taking his spot. And he's been like Michael Jordan's been playing well, but that is kind of worrisome for a guy that you just drafted last year.
I mean, yeah, it's worrisome for but you shouldn't force the lineup because of draft picks. And what you said about Michael Jordan is the thing, like this offensive line is such a house of cards. It's such a Jenga tower, right? That you don't know. You change one little thing and it's the whole thing going to come collapsing down. And Michael Jordan's playing good football right now. Like, credit to him. He wasn't put on the initial roster, gets an opportunity off the practice squad, and he's probably been their best lineman. Right through 5 games. Yeah. So, and he's been, that's not necessarily by default. He's been solid. So he deserves credit for that. And if I'm the coaching staff, I kind of understand looking at it and saying, well, we like City, but Mike's our best lineman. We got him back at guard. We can't move that. And this guy's been our most consistent player. We don't really want to take him out of the lineup. Like, we don't want to mess with a good thing. We don't want to touch it. We don't want to tweak it. So I'm sure it's frustrating for City. And yeah, you used a decently high draft pick on the guy you'd like for him to be a part of the plan. But and look, maybe what Michael Jordan's doing is not sustainable. I think with the guy like City sitting behind him, he probably is a shorter leash. But the guy's playing well right now. And as long as the guy's playing good football, again, with this line, if you're getting good play at any one position, don't touch it, don't question it. And so I'm riding the hot hand with Michael Jordan as long as I can. If he gets you through the season, awesome. If he gets it through 2 weeks and then it falls apart and then you go to City, I think you got 2 months of really solid guard play that you probably didn't expect from a guy that you cut at the end of camp. So yeah, that's where I'm at on that. You know, is it worrying if you're yes, because that's your job, but it's the NFL and your job's not guaranteed. If you get hurt, somebody can come in and win it. And Michael Jordan deserves credit. He stepped up and won it.
Yeah.
Sorry, you want to go ahead, Carlos?
No, I just wanted to make one last comment on it, just because I wanted to ask it about another lineman, just to hear both of your thoughts on it, on him. What do you think about Layden Robinson? Just because he got a lot of reps, he started the first couple weeks. Now he's no longer in the lineup. Do you see a world where he can earn himself a spot on that starting lineup within, I don't know, maybe not this year, but next year perhaps? Like that's like seems to be the spot on the offensive line where they have the most depth and the most competition. Obviously the tackle spot, that's more like of an open competition. The guard position, they have more vets, I would say. What do you see with Layden Robinson, like with his future? Obviously you can't predict it, but
yeah, like you said, they have 3, if not 4 starting caliber players there. You got Onwenu, who's going to be in the lineup. Michael Jordan's looked good, Robinson, and then I would move Cole Strange to center, but we'll see when he comes back where he's at. So Robinson's definitely facing competition. I understand why he's out of lineup right now. Too raw as a pass blocker, just not there yet. Good run blocker, too raw as a pass blocker. I do wonder, I kind of would like to see him as that jumbo tight end, maybe over Zach Thomas. Thomas hasn't wowed me there. And again, Robinson can run block. So, or even using him maybe as a fullback down on the goal line. They got to get to the goal line, but if they can get to the goal line, right, using him as a fullback there. And then long-term, we'll see. Like you said, he has some competition. That's why, I didn't love that pick. They've just hammered the guard position in the draft for the last 3 years. You can only have 2 guys start. So somebody's going to be the odd man out. City, Layden Robinson. I don't think they're moving Mike Onwenu back to tackle. Scott Peters basically said as much when we talked to him last week. They view Mike Onwenu as a guard long-term. That guy got paid. He's not coming out of the lineup. So realistically long-term, it's Layden Robinson and City because those are the 2 guys you just drafted. But here you have this guy you found on the street and Michael Jordan, who's been better than both of them. So the best player is going to play. You can't dwell on a bad draft pick. The worst thing I think a team can do is spend too much time on a bad draft pick and let it hamstring the team building process. That's what this team did with Isaiah Wynn, and that's a big part of the reason they're in the situation they are with the offensive line. They spent too much time trying to make Isaiah Wynn work. And if they burn a pick, obviously that sucks, but I want to see the best player out there, whoever it is. And they've certainly given themselves options. They don't need to add anymore. They've given themselves enough options at guard. Figure out who the guy is and go with it.
And So I want to ask you a little bit about the offensive game plan for Sunday. Like, I know Ramondre Stevenson's status is up in the air, but to kind of help Drake May settle in, do you think their approach on offense is going to be a bit run heavy or something else?
It should be. Like, I think it should be. I think it should have been last week, and it wasn't. And they came out week 1, said, we're going to run the ball down your throat. That's who we want to be. And they've done it less and less and less as the season's gone on. And I can't tell you why. It's weird. I would come out, I'd run the ball. I would establish the run, hit play action off of that. Basically what they did in the Bengals game. But you now have a quarterback with a more explosive arm who can maybe take more advantage of some of the things they're going to do off play action. It's also what I would have done last week. It's what I would have done the week before. And they're just not doing it. So, what's their game plan going to be? It's tough to say because there doesn't seem to be a ton of rhyme or reason to it right now, so it's hard to project. I can tell you what I would do. I can tell you what makes sense, which would, again, be running the ball. But last week was the most obvious run-heavy game I've seen maybe since the Buffalo win game for the Patriots. And I think they had like the 7th highest throw rate in the league. Or they were top 10, I know that. So after that, I'm on my toes. I don't know what to expect.
Yeah, I know Hunter Henry was asked about it on Jones and Keefe on WEI or on Monday. He was asked about it. He seemed kind of like the question annoyed him a bit, just because his response was just like, "Well, it worked." Like they asked him, "Do you think you ran the ball a lot?" And he said it worked. So kind of dodged the question in a way. Right. It seems like the offense knows that they should be running the ball more. For some reason, they're not. So maybe with Drake May, we'll see. Maybe they find it like that they have more confidence in throwing the ball now with Drake May in, even though, like you said, they should be running the ball more, especially considering that it's his first start. I'll be interested to see what Alex Van Pelt draws up. I know Drake May even said that Jacoby Brissett would go to Alex Van Pelt, talk about like what his favorite plays are. Who knows if maybe some of Drake May's favorite plays are downfield shots and they try to implement those. But I do think that it being his first start does throw a wrench into things. And maybe if they do establish the run against a good Texans defense, that kind of wakes them up a bit and they start like running it more in the future. So we'll see what happens.
I would just add on to that, with last week, it was a close game, right? They're leading late. Like they had the option to do, the whole playbook was open to them. There is a chance this week they're down 14-0, right? 21-0 early in the run game. They kind of have to throw out the run. So I would rule that out, but as long as they're in it, as long as it's a close game, the run game should be a major factor.
And it felt kind of weird in week 3, Thursday night against the Jets, which was one of their worst offensive performances on the season. Like week 1, like you alluded to, Alex, they kind of just abandoned the run game a bit. Like from week 1, it was just run first and they opened up play action, but then they kind of just flipped it around week 3, trying to open up the run game with play action, and that obviously did not work out. So that's going to be interesting to see how they approach this Sunday. But in terms of the Patriots defense, Nico Collins being out is huge for them. But how do you think that they'll try and limit the passing game? Will they? Excuse me again. Will they kind of force Akers and still having trouble producing and kind of force them to kind of produce on the ground?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing to me, and obviously different coaching staff, different personnel, Stephon Diggs has been as much of a Patriots killer as anybody in this league over the last 5 years. Like he got them time and time again. Now, it's not going to be J.C. Jackson across from him. It's going to be Christian Gonzalez. And I would argue, and this is me, somebody who just is annoyed by all things Buffalo Bills. Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, all these guys he's faced. Stephon Diggs is in some ways, to me, the biggest test, because this is a guy that the Patriots have not been able to stop for years. Like Jonathan Jones could cover Tyreek Hill. It's great Christian Gonzalez can do it, but Jonathan Jones did it for a long time. Nobody was covering Stephon Diggs in New England, and I think he's going to be a guy that gets, targeted a lot this week. So I'd help on him over the top. And yeah, I think you want to take the ball out of CJ Stroud's hands and force them to run as much as possible. Their line's banged up as well. Laramie Tunsil's on the injury report today. I think a couple other linemen were as well, if I recall correctly. But I'm going to be interested to see how much they try to get Diggs involved. And, is Diggs in there? And again, it's a different coaching staff. It's a different defense. It's different personnel. But is Diggs in there saying like, yeah, this worked against them when I was in Buffalo. Like we did this a lot. And this is how they defend this. And Diggs is a major X factor in this game to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know the Texans offense has been implementing run plays for him as well. Like that one other game that Nico Collins missed, he had a sweep that went for a touchdown.
Yeah.
They need to be mindful of that. I know Evan brought it up on Pats Unfiltered as well. For some reason, the Patriots defense does not like putting Gonzo in man. I would love to see him play more man-to-man coverage just because I feel like he's shown that he's capable of. I don't know if you disagree, but I think he's capable of running and sticking with the top receiver on the opposing side. So I would like to see him shadow Stephon Diggs the whole game or the majority of the game because like I know Tyreek Hill's like a different type of receiver, but he only ran 5 like true man-to-man reps with him. I would hope that number is higher when he plays against Stephon Diggs, who isn't as fast. He is more of like a pure route runner though. So we'll see how that goes. But I do think that he can stick with the best of them, especially someone like Stephon Diggs.
I'm with you. I'm with Evan. He's a man corner. He is a shutdown man corner, like Stephon Gilmore and those guys. I do wonder if they're playing more zone simply because the pass rush isn't getting there. And it's a little easier to stay with guys in zone than man. And maybe it buys that pass rush an extra second or two. But yeah, I'd have him, especially with Tank Dell's a good player, but he's a different kind of player. Like that's a John Jones assignment. Clear as day. And then after that, the Texans don't have a ton of depth at receiver. So I have no interest in Gonzalez covering anybody else. I think if he does, it's a waste. Also, the Patriots' other boundary corners outside of Jones haven't been great this year. Marco Wilson's banged up. Alex Austin has struggled at times. Isaiah Bolden hasn't really played. I don't know that you're putting him a ton on Stephon Diggs, right, in his first real NFL action, consistent NFL action. So, yeah, to me, it makes all – I get against a team like San Francisco – where you're maybe playing a little more sides because there's weapons everywhere and it's a very complex offense. So you want to simplify things on the back end. Same against Miami with Waddle and Hill. I don't want to say that the Houston Texans offense is simple, but they're not doing as much of this motion stuff. They don't have as much of an array of weapons. It makes a lot more sense this week for Gonzalez to shadow Diggs.
Yeah. I also think personally, I will say Xavier Hutchinson, he might be a big factor for them. Whenever they need him to step up, he does. And maybe he's not going to be like 100-yard receiver, but he makes those big plays. And I'm interested to see if they do. I know that he's been a healthy scratch a couple games, but I'm interested to see if they use John Mechie as well. I know those are names that most people might not, be worried by, but I think that they are capable of that one big play that just changes the whole game. So
I'll just say on Hutchinson, like the Patriots have struggled with bigger receivers this year multiple times. So if they can get him on a mismatch, they can get him on Marcus Jones, they can get him on Jonathan Jones. Like if I'm the Texans, I'm looking to try to create and exploit that matchup.
That's the one thing with the Patriots corners that can be a liability sometimes, just their size. I mean, Gonzalez is really like the main impact guy that's tall enough, but you got like Marcus Jones, John Jones, like you just said, they're a little smaller in size. And just gonna kind of transition into our next little segment. So key positional and player matchups. What are your key matchups for Sunday?
So I gave you one. We already talked about a couple of them, honestly. Vidarian Lowe against Hunter on the edge, or Will Anderson, or whoever. Gonzalez and Diggs, we just talked about quite a bit. I think that's a key one. Honestly, those are the two. Those are the two really I'm focused on. I have my notes right here. The other kind of things, if you want to do like, what was the other thing there? Like positions. Linebackers, like the Patriots have to be able to tackle better in this game. They've struggled since Juwan Bentley went out. I feel like Sione Taki's kind of on track to come back this week, right? He was limited to practice today, unlike last week when or I guess he was limited, but he was ruled doubtful. We'll see if he's ruled questionable. But they have the open roster spot. They made a point of opening up a roster spot at the beginning of the week when they released Kamara. Yeah, the linebacker play has not been good since Shawan Bentley went out, and they need Sione Takitaki to give them kind of a steady veteran there, because a lot of what's wrong with the defense right now is happening at the second level.
I'm interested to see who they have matching up with Dalton Schultz too. I know sometimes they're susceptible to tight ends having big games on them. It happened against the Jets with Tyler Conklin. So I'm interested to see if maybe Marte Mapu he's the matchup with him, or if they have someone else come down from the secondary. I'm trying to think who would, but Marte Mapu, I mean, they're like dropping, because I would say Kyle Duggar, I would say Jabril Peppers,
Right.
but that's clearly not going to happen.
Mapu's the first guy I go to, but I feel like they want him as more of a rover. I wonder if that's somewhere where you use Isaiah Bolden and take advantage of his size. And, it's a tough matchup. It's a veteran savvy tight end, and I don't love it, but he has the size to compete. He has the physicality to compete. And, he's a guy that profiles a little more as like a tight end stopper kind of corner. But you're right. Like, Schultz is going to be a tough matchup for them, just given the personnel they have or don't have right now.
Yeah, I also feel like Jalen Hawkins can be included in that mix. I feel like he's done a pretty good job when on tight ends, and he drops down to the box. But I feel like he can be in that conversation.
He can, and he'll probably do a little bit. The thing with him, for me, is this is a Texans team that wants to throw deep, and he's your best deep safety, especially like if Mapu's going to be wearing a green dot, you can't have him lining up 25 yards behind the line of scrimmage. I know Devin McCourty would do that occasionally. That's Devin McCourty. No disrespect to Marte Mapu. He's not Devin McCourty. So if you want him communicating the signals, it's tough to line him up back there. And not that Jalen Hawkins has necessarily been great as the deep safety, but he's probably the best option to play back there. And again, with a guy like Stephon Diggs, with a guy like Tank Dell, you mentioned John Mechie, who can stretch the field. If he's going to play, you need somebody back there making sure they can't, take the top off the defense.
And I mean, like, it'll be interesting to see what they do as far as the secondary, because this pass rush hasn't been too great. I know the Texans, like you said, they're struggling with injuries as well along their offensive line. So maybe that helps out the pass rush a little bit. But I wanted to ask, what if you had to finish the sentence? The Patriots will win if.
Oh, you listen to my podcast. That's how I had my podcast all the time.
Oh,
the Patriots will win. Well, I usually the Patriots win the Patriots will win if the Patriots win if they win the turnover battle. Because, and I know that's like no duh football, but this Texans offense has a significant margin for error to operate, and the Patriots don't. So if they can win the turnover battle, shorten the game, kill clock, win time of possession, something I didn't see talked about a ton coming out of that Miami game, and I get it. We didn't dissect the Miami game a lot because, we went right to the Drake Maye news, but Gerard Mayo mentioned after the game, fatigue played a factor. When Alec Ingold scores that touchdown to go up 15-10, right, with whatever it is, 5 minutes ago, that was the Dolphins' 72nd offensive play of the game. Most teams only run 60 to 65. That's 72 with 5 minutes to go. And it was not because the game was up tempo. The Patriots at that point had only run 41. A 30 play discrepancy is wild. That's wild. Mm-hmm. If you allow the Texans to out-rep you like that, they're going to run you out of the building. Yeah. Because you just can't give them that many opportunities. So if you can turn the ball over, win the time of possession, keep the play count balanced, and shorten the game, you just need Drake Maye to make you a couple plays. You have a shot to get it done.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree with that. That makes sense. They've been struggling with that. But yeah, I wanted to ask you, Andrew, if you could finish the sentence. The Patriots will win if.
Well, my same exact thing was the time of possession battle. Week 1, we saw their best performance of the season, and they won the time of possession battle, and they looked like they were in control throughout the game. And they kind of just lost that battle throughout the rest of the season so far. And I think you really got to prioritize that. Like Alex said, create turnovers and create possibility for you to do that.
Yeah, I mean, just me personally, if the if to that sentence, I would say I'm gonna take it from the defensive side. I'm gonna go with the Patriots holding the Texans to less than 20 points. I'll put it like that. I just think that the defense has to keep them in the game, and if the offense is supposedly going to be better with Drake Maye, I don't see why keeping the Texans like a powerful offense under 20 points can't lead them to a win.
Yeah, I mean, look, if they hold them under 20 points, they certainly have a chance. And that would be an incredible defensive effort by them.
Yeah, so
speaking of,
yeah, no, you could take it.
Speaking of the final or the score, moving on to our last segment we have here, final score predictions as well as how we think Drake Maye will perform. I'm gonna let our guest go first.
Final score. I am going to go. I haven't really done this yet. I'm going to go. I think Drake Maye does put up some numbers, but I think there's growing pains as well. I'm going to say 35-24 Texans.
What about a Drake Maye stat line prediction? Do you want to go in depth like that?
So I'll give you this. I calculated this the other day. I looked up some previous. It was on my Twitter if people want to find it. I looked up some previous notable Patriots quarterback debuts, like NFL debuts, right? And how they did it. And I kind of went through each one, and I thought to myself, like, all right, if Drake Maye has this game, how would I feel? And I look at Drew Bledsoe's stat line in his opener. He played the Bills, lost 38-14 in Buffalo. He went 14 of 30 for 148 yards with 2 touchdowns and a pick. Now, that was 30 years ago. I feel like the yardage might be higher, but I kind of see Drake Maye in that ballpark. Like, completes around 50% of his passes. Maybe it's a little lower than you want, but I think the yards per attempt or the yards per completion is going to be a higher number. And I think there will be 1 or 2 kind of jaw-dropping plays or throws, but I also think there's going to be 1 or 2 throws that were like, why did he do that? That might turn into turnover. So I'll say, like, again, I gave you that Bledsoe stat line. Let me modernize that. Let's call it like, and I'll stick with 14 of 30. Call it 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick.
I would love to see a Patriots quarterback throw for over 200 yards this season. I'm waiting for that. So I hope that's the case. I would honestly, I don't want to take your prediction, but I would say something. I agree with you. Like around 50% of his passes, yeah. I'm hoping 200 yards is like the baseline. Obviously, if it's under that, I wouldn't mind. Obviously, but it would be cool to see your rookie QB come in there and like automatically just enhance the passing game. So that is my hope. I do think he's going to throw at least 1 pick. That's my prediction, that he's going to throw at least 1 interception. But aside from that, the score, I'm going to go with 28-4. I'll say 17. I'll give them a field goal. So I think 2 touchdowns and maybe like a field goal in there. I would say 28-17.
By the way, you know the only Patriots first-round pick quarterback to throw for over 200 yards in his NFL debut?
Are you going to say Mac? No, is it Mac Jones?
Mac Jones against Miami, 29-39, 281 with a touchdown and no picks. If Drake Maye has Mac Jones' stat line on Sunday, we're all doing backflips up Route 1 after the game.
That is true. There's no Damian Harris to fumble on the goal line either.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, let's knock on wood. What has the current running back been doing? So
that's a good point. That's a good. Yeah. That is true. That is true. Andrew, what about you? What's your prediction?
I have a little more confidence in the defense. I got a final score of 24-17. I do think they get a couple touchdowns in, whether that's Drake Maye passing the ball or they get to the goal line and they pull off what we saw against, was it the Eagles where he had the design QB run?
Yes.
Yeah. Whether it's passing on the ground, I do think he ends up with an interception, like you just talked about, Carlos. Yeah, I got 24-17 Texans. Yeah.
Any final thoughts, Alex, before we head out?
I would just say along those lines, like, and I'm writing this right now. It'll be up tomorrow on 985sportshub.com. Obviously, the long-term goal for Drake Maye is he's the future of the franchise and he turns this thing around, right? That's not going to happen in one game. It's unrealistic to expect that to happen in one game. If it doesn't happen in one game, you don't panic. Again, just the list of debuts: Tom Brady, 13 for 23, 168 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Very bland stat line there. And you look at the rest of the rookies this year: Caleb Williams, Jane Daniels, who's now in like the MVP conversation. He wasn't bad, but it's hard to say he was good in his debut or even his first 2 games. It took 3 weeks for any rookie quarterback to throw a touchdown. So I would say don't jump to conclusions on what we see on Sunday, one way or the other. Again, I gave you Mac Jones' stat line too from his debut. It's going to be a process, and he might need to get his feet wet a little bit before we see the real Drake Maye.
Mm-hmm. All right, Andrew, you wanna close it out?
Yeah. Want to thank everyone for tuning in. Alex, thank you for coming on. This was a little bit in the making, but just want to say thank you. We had a great time talking Pats with you. Great time talking Pats with everyone watching. Alex, where can the people find you?
Yeah, you can find my work at 985thesportshub.com. The Patriots Beat podcast on the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel. And I've gotten a lot of questions about this. I think I've said this publicly. Catch 22 returns tomorrow at 2:00 with myself and Evan Lazar. We'll be back tomorrow. So it's I know there's some people out there waiting for that episode. So it's coming up.
Sounds good.
You can find Carlos to my right at Los Talks Pats on X. You can find me at NestPGS. Again, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll let you guys know we're going live next week. See ya.
Thank you, guys.